And I believe I heard Wood is absent. Hawkinson.
Here.
Huffman.
Here.
Cortez.
Here.
And do we have Jen Lautenbach?
I'm here.
Thank you. Lilyquist.
Here.
Sadhu.
Here.
And I believe Dan Darwin is absent. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to begin with one of the nicest parts of our meetings, which is employee recognition for Maureen and Tom, a 20 and 25 year WTA employees. Les, begin this or what?
Yep, I will. I have the honor of doing the first one. Hopefully you can hear me okay. So it's with great honor and privilege that I get to recognize Maureen for her 20-year service at WTA. We were just chatting about that this morning, how quick time goes. Thanks to Brian for displaying the screen. As you can see, one of the great things that Maureen's done is the bus and the children's art bus is one of the lasting legacies that she has. If you go to the next slide, Brian. So Maureen has been here for 20 years and has started in the community and government relations and is now our director of community and government relations. Interesting fact about Maureen is that she is a trained bus driver and drove a bus in Alaska. So she knows how to her way around the bus operations. So Brian, if you could go to the next slide, please. As you see, she started back in 2002, which kind of seems like yesterday, but was also was 20 years ago. So it's been the things that she's been involved in throughout. Some of the big things for WTA from strategic plan. She created the branding for the Go lines, and so you see now how wonderful that's been. And then the bus paint scheme says we said at the beginning for the kids art buses is one of those things that I hear about all the time from folks how they love that. In fact, down at the farmers market just last weekend before last. Doing a kids art project and the parents just loving that opportunity means a lot to them. So those are just some of the creative things that Maureen does. The other thing will say is she has a very strategic mind and is really helping us as we go through this transformation in WTA and how can WTA help participate with our other partners in the community to solve these complex problems. It's a real honor and a privilege to get to work with Maureen. She has a lot of influential leadership as well as positional leadership in the organization, and it's just a real honor for us and to get to work with her. So with that, Maureen, congratulations. Thank you for a great 20 years and here's to 20 more.
Thank you, Les. Is Maureen here? I can't quite see everyone. Is she in the boardroom?
She is. She's being duly embarrassed.
Maureen, do you want to further your embarrassment or just quietly be happy?
She's online as opposed to the boardroom.
I'll just say thank you very much. It's been a fast and fun 20 years, and I've never been more excited about where we're headed. So thank you very much.
Nice. Thank you very much. And we'll then go on to recognizing Tom, 25 years.
Oh, I just wanted to say, Maureen, thank you very much.
Go ahead.
I just said that. I said, thank you, Maureen, for your service. And I think I've known her since she joined this thing because I was at Bellingham Tech and when she joined this place, and we have crossed each other's paths since then. And yeah, great service to our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great. And Tom, who's going to tell us all about Tom?
I can take care of that for us and celebrate transit operator Tom Kinsman. But before I do, I wanted to say one thing that Les forgot to mention about Maureen is that she is probably our staff's best ukulele player. So if you ever need ukulele at your kid's birthday party, neighborhood gathering, just give her a call and she's more than happy to write a song and perform for you. Have video evidence if you need. But Tom Kinsman, 25 years as a transit operator. And if there is one transit operator that truly embodies our first mission bullet of safe, reliable, efficient, and friendly service, it's Tom Kinsman. That smile that you see on that leftmost slide, that's Tom. That is Tom. Every day you see him when he comes through and he's just got this big, big smile. And he just brings that joy out to the field and out to our customers every single day. He has 22 years of straight safe driving. And not only is he recognized for that through our Safe Driving Award program, but technically he is one of our standout fixed route transit operators. He is a multi-time rodeo champion and the defending rodeo champion for WTA. So he takes those skills on the streets of Bellingham and in our parking lot here at Moab. And he's happy to share those skills and help to develop other transit operators. But along with his driving excellence, Tom, it just consistently proves to be a stalwart and reliable operator from customer service standpoint. He has weathered these situations and the challenges of COVID with great joy. And just he takes a subtle leadership role within the agency and to the other transit operators. He always shows politeness and a willingness to help passengers and coworkers feel safe and appreciated. And he just absolutely represents WTA well every day. I am happy to work with him. He's been a pleasure and a great coworker over my tenure here. And 25 years from October 1997 to now, he is just serving our community every day, and he is doing that right now. He's not present with us because he's out driving a bus, and we're just proud to honor him and celebrate him this morning. So please join with me in giving him a hand. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's people like Tom that are the everyday face of WTA, and I think it's why we're appreciated and liked, and it's because of people like Tom. Okay, so we go on to the next item, which is citizen communications. Are there any citizens communications the board should be made aware of?
Vicky, have we received anything?
No, we haven't.
Okay. Can't tell if there's any folks online. It doesn't look like it, but
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll go on. By the way, I got another message from Mayor Fleetwood. He is still in technological purgatory. He's trying to join, but we have a quorum, so we'll keep going. Board action. There are several board actions. The first is consideration of approval of the order for 12 paratransit buses from Northwest Bus. Mr. Bowler, will you go ahead and present this?
This is a replacement for some older buses we have, 2015, 2016. As you mentioned, this is with Northwest Bus, which would be a brand new vendor for us. Of note, our 2021 order, which was approved in June by the board, has not been filled yet due to extreme price increases. That was a 50% price increase. So that's been frozen as we work through those details. The ask for gas instead of propane has several different reasons. The primary reason is they will be built 3 to 4 months sooner than propane, and they are a substantial savings. And then keep in mind, these buses are usually only 4 to 6 year lifespan. Then they have a large amount of miles, and we replace them and try to move on.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or further discussion from the board members? Again, this will be a shift towards gas buses rather than the propane buses.
I'll move we approve this.
I'll second.
Thank you. You have a motion before us. Any further discussion? I'm now going to call the question by unanimous consent. Is there anyone who wishes to dissent or vote no? Otherwise, we'll consider the motion passed unanimously. Hearing no dissent, the motion is passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Now, Becky Kelly, convert to the next item, which is consideration of the setting of a public hearing, November 17th, 2022, for proposed service changes to Route 75 and a service change update. Again, this is just to set the public hearing.
Correct, yes. Route 75 is one of our 3 flex routes. So currently there's a flex boundary out in Birch Bay and Blaine where any passenger can call ahead and get picked up as close to their start or end point. This route has had extreme variability in its on-time performance. Sometimes because of the flexing, it can be 10 to 15 minutes late. So the reliability for passengers wanting to make connections or get to work on time has been an issue. Sometimes it's on time and sometimes it's 15 minutes late, and there's just so much variability. So what we're proposing is that we would remove the flex service for Route 75 and extend the regular fixed route routing to Birch Bay Village, which is one of our top flex pickup locations, and then also extend it slightly north in Blaine up to serve where the food bank is, and there's also some density up there. This would, if we remove flex, it would create an ADA corridor in Birch Bay and Blaine. And the cost associated, the actual fixed route routing would not change, but the cost associated would be in adding the paratransit service. So for a half year, $221,000, and then for a full year, $432,000 estimated.
Okay, anything more? Is there anything more?
Set the hearing.
Correct, yes.
I'll move we set the hearing for November 17th.
I'll second.
Okay, the motion to set the hearing for November 17th. I just have a small question. Since this affects but maybe strong affects a relatively small set of our overall users, are we going to have particular outreach in the region affected?
Yes. So thanks for asking. Next week, we're having 2 open house meetings. Wednesday, October 19th, 4:30 to 6:30 at the Blaine Senior Center, and Thursday, October 20th, 4:30 to 6:30 at the Birch Bay Chamber of Commerce. And we've outreached to the Northern Lights in our website and on the buses to let people know of the potential changes.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, the motion is to set the hearing for November 17th. There are no objections. We'll consider the motion passed. Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion is passed unanimously. We'll have the hearing on the 17th. And the next item is consideration of authorizing the general manager to lease roof access at Moab for microwave radio installation. Mr. Nylander, Josh, go ahead.
Hey, good morning. This is a quick one. As part of the joint radio effort that we're working on, we need to connect our main facility here on Bakerview Spur to the rest of the broader microwave network that the sheriff's office is leading the effort to build out. And as part of that, they're going to purchase and install 2 microwave repeaters and some switching gear on our roof. And that'll allow us to connect up and help connect all of the sites together. So it's no cost to them and no cost to us. They're using grant funding to purchase the equipment, and then we'll be able to connect into it and utilize it as well. So this is just formalizing that process. And this lease was required as part of the grants that they're submitting as well. So they need documentation that we'd authorized it. So.
Board members?
I move we authorize the general manager to lease roof access at Moab for microwave radio installation.
A second.
Thank you, Jen. So this is, I'm just going ahead and call the question, and unless anyone has any questions about this, it examines a zero cost lease, no cash cost. And if there are no objections, we'll consider authorization given to the general manager. Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Michael, I got a question on that.
I'm sorry.
No, just is this, I mean, this doesn't cost anything. Why do we need a motion to do this? It's not something that the director can, Les can just authorize. It's not a contract with the fiscal cost.
Well, it doesn't cost anything dollar wise, but it's still use of our property. So
Yeah, that, oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay. I get it. Okay.
Because it's a real estate lease, we felt that we needed to get board authorization. And then as it's part of a grant too, in case they come back and ask, just to make sure and close the loop.
Now we're going to do a background check on the sheriff to make sure they're on the up and up.
Yes, sir.
Right. Thanks for the explanation.
Sorry, I didn't give you a chance to ask that ahead of time, Todd.
I didn't try to ask it ahead of time. So
okay. So that already passed unanimously. We'll go on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda consisting of the minutes and expenditures?
I'll move approval.
Then I'll second.
Okay, thank you very much. Unless there's objection, we'll consider the consent agenda approved unanimously. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the consent agenda is approved. So now we're going on to reports to the board. This is the meat and potatoes of the meeting today. This is the first discussion of the zero fare policy, and then finally a mission update on innovative transportation solutions and general manager's report. So let's begin with this. Les, do you want to say anything, or should we go to Tim and Becky?
Before we turn it over to Tim and Becky, I wanted to thank them and the FAIR team for spending a lot of time and effort to review this and try to develop the factual background that is in the memo that you've received entitled Zero Fare Assessments. The intent of this is a follow-up from board direction to have us look and study what zero fare looks like, and then where we would like to go with this discussion today is whether the board wants us to bring back a plan for what it would look like for WTA to implement it, which would then we would then go out and talk to operators, community, those kinds of things to see how this would actually operationalize for WTA. So today's factual discussion and to see whether the board wants to continue that. If not, then there's back to the phase 2 fair where we're looking at how our fairs are done. But we can't get to that unless we philosophically solve this as the initial question. So hopefully that makes sense. Fortunately, Becky and Tim are here that are the brains behind it, and they'll make sense, I'm sure. So over to you, Tim or Becky.
Yeah, I'll just brief words. Becky's going to be giving the presentation this morning. Did want to just mention, in addition to Les's comments, that we have a fair policy committee at WTA that takes a look at initiatives regarding our fair policy and forwards any recommendations to the board. So this was processed through that committee, which is made up of various departments, planning, operations, finance, and others in that group. So we spent a lot of time over the last year examining other communities that have gone fare free and talking to them directly, in some cases, gathering information through the web, and then talking to our own internal audiences about different aspects, whether it be operator and behaviors that they're experiencing in the system, and our experiences with being fare free back during the pandemic and other kinds of things. So we have spent a lot of time looking at that data, and Becky has done a great amount of work to compile information from the various departments into the report that you have. Hopefully you've received a copy of that, which we will summarize in the presentation. So again, to emphasize, we're looking for clear direction from the board, whether you want us to drop the idea and just continue with our phase 2, which we had initiated a couple of years ago, or whether you'd like us to continue work on zero fare policy. So with that, I'll turn that over to Becky.
Okay. We're just trying to get the presentation up. Brian's working on it.
I can see it, if that helps.
It's not in slideshow mode though.
No.
So while Becky is pulling this up, I did also want to mention that we haven't done any specific community outreach around this issue. We were planning that if the board wanted us to continue that, we would do an extensive community process. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that.
So can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. So just an overview of what we collect from fairs. In 2019, which was our last full year of collecting fairs, we collected 2.5 million. And then that was 6.7% of our total revenue, which is what we call our fair recovery ratio. We also looked at January through August of the current year, and we've collected $930,000, which was 2.3% of the total revenue. And as a comparison to the same period in 2019, we're 54%, that was 54% of the amount pre-pandemic. So these are the top 3 categories of who we give free rides to. So youth 18 and under, ages 75 and older, and then we give out free 6 ride tickets to approved social and health agencies. There's also some other categories like WTA employees, school field trips, board members. And so this accounts for about 11% of our total boardings are those who we're already giving free rides to.
On that one, how much revenue did we lose because of all of, like, the first 2 are kind of new, right?
The ages 75 and older we've had.
Okay.
It used to be 85 and then we lowered it to 75, but the 18 and under, I don't have that amount. Maybe is Tammy on the call?
That's okay.
Okay, we can get that to you though, what the youth accounted for. So these are some of the things that have caused reduction in our fares from revenue. So we have reduced ridership due to the pandemic. We had restructuring of the Western Universal Bus Pass program, and then implementing the Youth Ride Free program. So those are 3 things that contributed to us being lower. So I just wanted to go into a little bit about the cost for us to collect the fares. So we did an analysis of all the costs that we collect. And this is looking at January through August and then averaging it on a monthly basis. So the first one on the screen here is our transaction fees for our UMO system. So that's $7,100 a month. Then we have an armored car service for $870 a month. Our point of sale software fee is $800 a month. Then we pay $1,800 a month in credit card fees. We have a cellular service where we sell passes at Hagen for $250 a month. The cost to buy passes and tickets, $720 a month. This is labor parts for the fleet department, $4,000 a month. Other WTA staff time at $41,500 a month, and this includes finance, marketing, planning, operations, so everything that involves any aspect of us collecting fares. And then these are the hard marketing costs for ads for our Free Fair Week and our Youth Ride Free program. And then our total expenses is $64,000 a month to collect fares. So that's 55% of what we collected. And I would like to note that if we went to zero fare, we weren't planning on proposing eliminating any positions. So that staff time would be redirected to other projects. So if you take out those costs, it lowers to 19% if you take out the labor costs that we wouldn't actually be eliminating. So another aspect of fare collection is our equipment we use on the buses and our passes and tickets. So the cost for our fare boxes when we bought them back in 2014 was 2.6 million. To get them in the future, that cost would be more. The UMA readers, they have a refurbish program, so we could, in the future, we could refurbish them. That'd be $57,000 to do all the buses, or $188,000 to replace them. And then we're going to need to put in an order for additional passes, and that will be an expense of around $30,000. So we're almost through our existing stock. So currently, right now, our GFI and our UMO readers provide us some information besides just, they provide how many people board the bus. They also provide some demographic information because people buy pass types based on who they are. And then we also can see how many times a specific pass was used. So we can know on average how many rides were a 31-day pass user, how many did they ride for. So if we eliminated fares and thus eliminated the GFI and UMA readers, we would need to count passengers in another way. So there's always manual counting, which nobody is really in favor of that, but might need to be a short-term solution for small periods. We do that already, like in the free fare week. And another option is the automatic passenger counters. So the sensors on the buses, which would not only give us boarding information, but also alighting information. So the cost for APCs is $800,000, and it would take us 2 years to implement. And I just wanted to mention that automatic passenger counters is something we are looking at regardless of whether we go to zero fare. This is something we might do anyways.
Can you explain that a little bit more, Becky? Like why
About
would
the-
we, let's say we still had
Yeah.
the regular fare counters. What is the value of the APCs if we do have fare?
Yeah, so for the APCs, it not only counts who's getting on, but who's getting off. So it gives us load data, which we don't have currently. So we have no way to know, except for when the drivers push a button, that the bus is full. So it's only giving us where people are getting on and not where people are getting off. The automatic passenger counters also are what connects into all our data systems. So right now, the fare box, the two systems, we're trying to work on a hand creating system to integrate to have those information flow up into our other data systems. But most agencies are using the APCs, and then so all the systems are set up to have that data flow up into them. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I have one other benefit, and that is right now we're required by what's called the NTD, that's the feds, to do manual randomized surveys. And with APCs, we wouldn't be required to do those randomized surveys. So there'd be a cost savings in terms of labor. We hire temporary employees to do those random surveys. So that would be another benefit that could replace that system.
And how long do we think this system could be in place before it would have to be replaced? And what's the maintenance costs every year for it?
I can answer that. We're still researching those maintenance costs. The APCs themselves, we think will last the life of the bus. So 12 plus years, the actual equipment. The equipment cost in the bus is probably about, I don't know, roughly about a third of the cost, including installation. There's also back-end software and solutions that need to be purchased, as well as we get going, you actually hire a consultant, a statistician, to go through and make sure all the data works right. So that's another chunk of the initial cost. one of the things that we'll be doing next year and part of this project is researching some more of those answers, doing some getting a hold of some current users of APCs and getting the data on what their maintenance costs are and what they're seeing for true life expectancy beyond what the vendors are telling us. So I think they'll, most agencies have these and they're running pretty well. So.
Okay, great. Thanks.
I'm sorry, Josh, you said most agencies, like, do you mean like 90% across the nation or like, you know, what do you mean by most?
Most agencies our size are bigger, so a majority. I don't think it's 90%, but do have APCs. We're kind of late to the game on that. I don't know the exact percentage, but I do think
that's fine. Thank you. Go ahead, Becky.
So for one of the things we looked at were ridership impacts. What would happen if we went to zero fares and now anybody could ride as many times as they wanted? And studies have shown that systems see a 15 to 35% increase with zero fares. And we think that this would not have a huge immediate impact. We think we could accommodate the increase because our largest ridership group is already taking unlimited rides with their Western Universal Bus Pass. So we think we have capacity at this point for the other riders who would now start riding more. When I created this PowerPoint, we only have the first week of fall quarter for Western, and that was 73% of 2019. We've now, as we've moved into October, we're up to 88% ridership of 2019. So it's increased with Western back in session. So that's good news. So for dwell time, this is counted as any time the bus is stopped while in revenue service. And one aspect of dwell time is the time for people to pay at the fare box. And we did some research looking at videos to get an estimate of what we thought that was. And we're estimating that would be just over 8 hours a day that the bus is stopped waiting for people to pull out their pass or figuring out which fare system to use or digging around for change. So if we eliminated this portion of our dwell time, it would really help our on-time performance and our reliability, and would hopefully allow us to not have to add time to our routes in the future. So for the potential safety impacts, when you move to zero fare, you reduce the conflict over payment. So that would have one less potential area for impact for conflict between the driver and the passenger. There are some concerns about not having fares and what that would do to rider behavior. Some agencies have implemented the slogan, zero fare doesn't mean zero rules, so there would still be rules associated with behavior. And then the next one we looked at was the increase of riders who are what are called destinationless riders, who are just riding the bus just to ride and not going anywhere. And there's ways to address that with policy and with some support services on the bus. For paratransit, this would be another area that would be impacted. So other agencies that we looked at had 20 to 30% increases in their paratransit ridership. And this would be an additional cost to WTA to have additional paratransit trips. Where we're at for our paratransit ridership is right now we're at 70% of our 2019 numbers. So this would be an impact we would have to look at how it affects staffing and vehicles and how much we could absorb and what we would need to add additional. So I just wanted to mention these are some of the agencies that we looked at in Olympia, Island County, Link in Chelan, Mountain Lion in Missoula, Corvallis, Chapel Hill, and in Kansas City. These were ones that have already done zero fare. So to try to get some case studies and to see how their system would apply to ours. Lastly, equity was one of the key priorities in our WTA 2040 plan. And eliminating fares and going to a zero fare, it does reduce the barrier and increases access to transportation. Now this is no longer something you just have access to no matter what you can afford, and you can take as many trips as you need, not related to cost. And we did an analysis, and 60% of people who live in poverty in Whatcom County live within a quarter mile of a bus route, so that those people would now have more access to transportation. So I can open it for questions, but I wanted to say what we're looking for from the board today is to help guide us into our next step. So we want to know in one or two directions. Should WTA move forward with collecting fares and resume our phase 2 of our fare collection study? Or should WTA move forward with a zero fare proposal, get community feedback, and present a proposal of what that would take for WTA to move towards zero fare? So I'd like to open it up for discussion.
On your slide that showed your 7 agencies or whatever it was that compared, was it easy to find this group, or is this, I mean, or is this a select group in the country?
So the ones in Washington, obviously we have the closest relationship with.
But I mean, are there more than 3 in Washington, or are those the only ones in Washington?
Those are the ones I know of. I'm not sure. Does anyone else at WTA know of additional ones?
So there are others, and I'd ask Shonda to step in too, because she was just at a finance meeting where they were talking about this. But I know Mason Transit's looking at it. I think, is it
Clallam's looking at it. Skagit is looking at it. So there's a number of other folks that are thinking about it, and it sounds like seriously thinking about going zero fare.
I think Mason has made the decision. They just haven't implemented yet.
I believe you're correct.
Do you have any idea how many of these counties have universities within them?
No, Olympia, and
that would, I think, be really good information for us.
So of this list, University of Montana is at Mountain Lion, Oregon State and Corvallis, University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill are on those. And then there are multiple universities in Kansas City.
Evergreen's in Olympia.
Right, yeah, good point. Yeah.
Let me ask that question in a different way. What is the range of kinds of transit agencies that are considering or have gone to zero fare? In other words, are there small ones that are that way already? Are there large ones that are that way? Are there, places that cover large rural areas or counties and places that are focused in the cities? And both of those have tried zero fare. What is the range of types of transit agencies that have gone this way or considering going this way?
Yeah, so I think this list is sort of covered all those things. Link Transit covers a large area, and Island is a small agency. And then I would say like Olympia and Missoula and Corvallis are similar to us. And then Kansas City is sort of the more urban, larger version of the ones that have gone to zero fare, but we can look into it more. But I think this list does have a range.
I would say if you had the opportunity to or can listen to that Freakonomics link that we sent, that has some great information about that talks about what one transit agency is one transit agency, and that it's very different, and it depends on the models. So for example, large commuter-based ones, there's a lot of revenue that's coming from, like down in Seattle, where you have Amazon paying bus passes for people to ride. Smaller agencies that don't have that are in a different place. Then you look at Boston where they're going fare free on certain routes from that. And so there's a part in there where a UCLA professor talks about that and how it's the demographics and the geography and the ridership and things just kind of, it's hard to analyze by looking at one and saying, by analogy, that will work for us, which isn't a great answer because it's, we all, at least I want the analogous situation to guide. So I would recommend that podcast.
Todd, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a good idea to keep pursuing. And then the last slide, if you could go to the questions, I'm thinking that, I mean, we can continue, excuse me, collecting fares right now and look at this proposal and keep considering it. I think it's worth pursuing for equity reasons and maybe increase ridership stuff. But I also think, like, could we expand the free fares and keep Western in their kind of pass program that's working where they're paying, or would it just be everybody has no fares? But so that's one question. Then the other one is, like, so the biggest cost in collecting the fares was $492,000 a year for staff. That's like, right now we have 5 full-time FTE approximately that are dedicated full-time to doing the fare processing, and I think it was said that they could be redirected to something else. But that's not counted in the cost saving, then, is it? But is that a fair characterization that right now, if it was $41,000 a month in staff time, that's about 5 full FTE?
Yes, so that it was $41,000 a month, and that is across all departments. So planning, you know, we manage the social health and the classroom passes, and then the fleet technician. So it's a little bit of everybody's position and the finance department. So at this point, we're not proposing that would be a cost savings. Is that what you're?
Yeah, Todd, so Tammy's position, the revenue manager, this is her primary role at WTA, is to manage the revenue program. And then we have folks who count the money, deposit the money, those types of things. So if we eliminated fares, some of that time would go away, but we would propose that we keep the revenue manager position and just deploy that differently. So those savings, we don't anticipate seeing a lot of savings in hard costs for staff time. But for example, the customer service representatives would be able to spend more time assisting customers, booking rides, answering those calls versus selling and distributing passes at the stations and on the phone.
So where in the memo, it says that 55% of the revenue brought in by fares is spent on the work in collecting it. Does that include the staff time?
It does.
It does, yeah. If we take out the staff time, it drops down to 19%.
So but we're going to keep the staff, and that's just kind of surprising to me that it was that much. And I don't want to get rid of the staff, but I think it is worth pursuing the no fare thing. And could we maybe, like, will the Western students not know that they have a free fare if they don't have their pass? And, you know, are there ways to have these big group revenues coming in from users like that while expanding free fares for, you know, any just sort of regular walk-up folks?
Yeah. We have to be careful on how we do free fares. We need to do it by separate groups. So like we have 75 and older is a group. So we'd have to look into making sure that we have those defined within the gifting of public funds rules and how we define what the groups are. And I would just say that I agree, it's a lot of money spent on tasks and fare collection and counting, and it's just a labor intensive process.
I would also add that as we start squeezing the middle being those people who are still paying. So we have the youth 18 and under that are now free. We have the older adults that are free. We've got the social health passes, which could be as many as 300,000 rides a year. That portion that are still paying gets smaller and smaller. And so then you get into kind of a fairness issue. You have a smaller percentage of people that would then be paying a fare. So I think we need to be really careful about, you know, the size of that group that's still paying, whether it's just Western students. I think would be concerned about just that particular group that's paying for it. But we can certainly continue to collect fares as we're processing this information. But I think our recommendation is, you know, we don't do it just partially, that we have either zero fares or, I mean, alternative, we did talk about having a income-based fare reduction. But again, that would narrow sort of the group that's paying for full fares. So
I see Eric's hand up and Holly and then Les. We'll do it in that order, please.
Yeah, I have some hesitation about zero fares. In theory, I think it's a great idea. But in reality, I feel like there's a number of things that makes me want to put a pin in this until next year. One is once you completely take away a fee, getting it back is a really difficult thing to do, right? Secondly, I would be fine for reducing fares, but you know, like was mentioned earlier, there's a lot of potential money in WWU, for example. There's other areas, and if we're talking about equity, one of the slides in there that really kind of stood out at me is 60% of people are a quarter mile from the bus. 6% of people who are in poverty are a quarter mile from a bus stop, but that means there's 40% of people who are not a quarter mile from the bus stop, which is to me more telling, because living in a rural area, we're going to have a lot of those people. And so I feel like if we're gonna start eliminating revenue, I mean our revenue from fares have been going steadily down, and I've been on the board 5 years now. No, it's never been addressed, right? It's been addressed, but it's just been kind of pushed away, and Michael and can attest to the fact that number has been going down every year. If we continue also with the economy being kind of as volatile as it is, you know, fuel going up so much, price of buses going up so much, we don't know what our costs are going to be in the future, on top of the fact that some of this monies can be redistributed toward that 40% of people who have a hard time getting to the bus stop because they're more than a quarter mile away. So I mean, as far as equity goes, my big concern is about those 40% in poverty that are not near a bus stop. I just think there's a number of reasons that putting a pin in this for a year might be good, and then readdressing it again in a year. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't be all in favor of it next year, but I just feel like it's not a great time, and I think there's a number of reasons to just put a pin in it. So
thank you. Holly?
Thank you. So I am interested in continuing to look further into this. Sounds like there are a lot of benefits. I'm particularly interested in hearing feedback from the cities that have implemented zero fares and what they would report out about the change. And one thing that came to mind as well, if we do look into this further, that I might be interested in knowing more about is an effect on tourism, if that's something that's measurable. I'm also on the board of Bellingham Whatcom County Tourism, and there's an insane amount of data that group collects about who comes to our county, where they go, and how long they stay. And I don't know if that includes transportation, or I don't know if it's even possible, but cell phone data gives us a lot of information. So I would be interested if there's an effect on tourism, if it's more appealing to people coming to our county, if they come by plane or boat or bus, what kinds of transportation they're using, and if a free system would be something that would be eye-catching for tourism, and that because we have a lot of people, we have way more people than I ever would have imagined that are visitors to our county at any one time. So I'd be interested in knowing more about that if it's even possible.
Okay, good questions. Les, you had your hand up.
Yes, sir. Just two clarifying things. One on, just to make sure on this slide, that it's not intended to be an either or, that we stop collecting now while we study. We would continue collecting while we studied and tee up the decision for the board. So that would still continue. The other clarifying thing on the staff part, what we're looking at as we're doing this transformation with WTA, we are assessing everything we do is important, but looking at what is the most important and how does that tie to that transformation. And part of that is aligning the organization to the mission. And so building capacity to be able to look at transit-oriented development or high frequency, those kinds of things. And so those staff members that would be reallocated, the intent is to build greater capacity and capability to help us through this transition. As you all know, there's only certain levers you can do to build that capacity and capability. It's hiring, it's not doing some things, it's reallocating people to do other things. And so looking at all those levers on how do we implement this transformation.
Thank you. And I want to make sure we hear from everyone, but Tammy, I see your hand up, and then I'm going to go around and ask the board members who haven't spoken yet just to weigh in briefly. So Tammy?
I wanted to add a little bit of clarifying information for the revenues. As far as Western goes, the youth ride free 18 and under impacts our revenues from Western because there are a lot of 18-year-old freshmen. So one of the reasons when WTA implemented 17 and under initially was because it was to not have to figure out how to tease out those 18-year-old freshmen at Western and at Whatcom. And so now that's taken a chunk. This quarter, it's 3,700 students that are probably heavy riders out of what we can charge Western for. And also our revenue from Western has decreased quite a bit because we changed the model from a very odd calculation of FTEs to charging them per tap. And we also are paying per tap. So the amount that we're paying for our UMO system went from about $7,000 a month, jumped a bit, like to almost $10,000 a month because of Western students, because there's a lot of them and they ride a lot. So we're paying per tap, but we're also charging them per tap. So there's some changes in all of that are going to affect how much revenue that we actually collect from Western.
Okay, thanks for that. And then Setpal?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, do we have a data that is there any correlation if we take the student population out, that when we do a free fare, there's any increase in ridership? Does any correlation exist that I know that if it is goes up beyond a certain point, the ridership will get lower. But if we go low or no fare, does it increase in the ridership? I don't know if there is a data or not. Thank you.
Yeah, so the other agencies that we looked at, the ridership when they went to zero fares increased like 20 to 30%. For us, we already have 40% of our ridership that is riding with a universal pass. So we might not see as much increase as other agencies who everyone went to zero fares. I'd have to look at the other agencies that had colleges to see if they had universal passes. But we would expect that the paying riders that would increase significantly if we went to the zero.
Michael, I have a question. On the one slide that showed paratransit, I think it was 20 to 30% increase in paratransit. When we talked about the Route 75 earlier, I noticed it was $430,000 extra for paratransit, which is one route, big increase. I guess I really want to know that 20 to 30% paratransit, what's that going to cost us? I think that's a bigger number hiding in the bushes than we think.
Yeah, I also am a little bit concerned, or I guess not concerned, but I'd like some idea or guess of additional positions that we're going to hire. You know, this is going to likely require more security, possibly a social worker if we're having a lot more people on the bus. And, you know, I'd like to know what additional costs other agencies have taken on and what we think that we will have to take on. And also if we can take that extra staff time that we're gonna have and teach everyone how to write grants, because we're gonna need that.
So Shonda, I see your hand up, but I really want to hear from board members. So Jen, I'm going to pick on you. Where are you at the moment?
I'm, when we talked about this originally, I think maybe in one of our in-person meetings, I was not convinced of it. I would say I'm still not convinced of it. I'm just wondering how the other agencies that were mentioned, how long have they been at a zero fare model? Referencing equity, do we have any data about how many of those, that 60% of the poverty line community is currently writing WTA or accessing services? And then just looking at our ridership has not recovered to 2019 levels. And I think before we make any substantial changes, I think we need to see buy-in on ridership again before we look at making some of these changes.
Okay, thank you. Some good questions. Seth, I see you're on here by phone. Can you unmute, and do you have any thoughts at the moment?
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed the start of this discussion. My immediate inclination is to support further exploration, but I'm also mindful of what kind of commitment that would mean as far as staff time. I'm curious to hear from staff as to whether they have an opinion on whether they feel that the information that we've adduced thus far and explored thus far is adequate or sufficient in your view to sort of direct us to some important degree. Does that make sense? I guess I'm wondering about sort of sufficiency. Is to do adequate exploration, does it require significantly more information that we don't have? Or could an argument be made that no, we've got sufficient information now to make the decision?
Tim,
Yeah,
I'd love to hear your thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah, my thoughts are, I think just to acknowledge there's a considerable amount of uncertainty around this issue and the effects that we'll have on WTA. So I think we feel that we've done quite a bit of work around this issue. Certainly there are areas that we can continue to explore and provide more information. Like I said earlier, we've reached out to other agencies. They all have different experiences, but I think generally most of them are satisfied with moving to zero fares. I'm not saying that in order to support, any sort of position at WTA, but that's what we're hearing from those other agencies. And most of them honestly are doing it for one of the primary purposes is because of the cost of fare collection, that they feel that the cost of fare collection outweighs the revenues that they generate. So that seems to be the number one reason. That was one of the reasons that Intercity went to zero fare, is because they were faced with transitioning with some new technology, getting an ORCA card system in place, and they felt that it wasn't, it just didn't pan out. There wasn't value add for them doing that. So yeah, I think we feel that we have considerable information, but I do realize that there's a lot of uncertainty with the outcomes here at WTA.
Shonda?
So I don't know.
No, thank you, Tim. Shonda, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple things. I wanted to remind the board that Intercity did also go out for a sales tax increase. And I think that played into their decision partly to go fare free. They went up to 1.2% versus I think they were at 0.09. And we can get you the cost of the additional paratransit trips. We have those broken down. I just don't have that in hand. Oh goodness. And there was one other thing I was going to say that has left my brain, but I will email it out to the board when it comes back.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
a couple things. We're approaching 9 o'clock. Our brilliant plan to spread out the workload and not have long meetings is not working. But I do want to continue this, and I'm going to take my swing at it. I went back and forth on the zero fare idea, in part because I thought there was some significance to people kind of paying for something and therefore psychologically valuing something that they're paying into. But that reason is now being outweighed in my mind. The thing that struck me the most is this really isn't a big financial decision. People are going to think it is, but it isn't. I think it's more a philosophical and operational decision. One reason why I say it's not a financial decision is I've come to see us as running two different businesses. One is a heavily subsidized, very expensive, but very important paratransit service, and the other is a fixed route service. And there's some stuff in between. We are already running the most expensive part of our service is the paratransit, and that's where our expenses are greatest per rider, per mile, per whatever. When it comes to the fixed route, it just seems like fare collection is just friction in the system. Financially speaking, we're already running a heavily subsidized system, paratransit, and then also a heavily subsidized fixed route. It's not a huge increment to go to fully subsidized and then philosophically reorient ourselves that we're like a public library. We're a community-wide service to benefit everyone. So I'm very interested in going forward, and I heard a number of very good questions asked today. And what I think I would like is to hear directly from the mouths of other transit agencies. I'd almost kind of like to have like a Zoom conference with a couple people and really hear how it feels to board members or leaders at other organizations. I'm less interested in the financial analysis because I really don't think that's what's going to cut it. I think that's not actually going to drive our decision. The numbers are too close and they're too small. Those are my thoughts.
Michael?
Go ahead, Seth.
Question for staff. Is there what we regard as sort of the closest, most similarly situated by some criteria agency out there that we could look at who have gone to zero fare?
I think size-wise, intercity is probably the closest, although they are, as Sean had mentioned, they have a higher sales tax amount and they are more urban-based, so they don't have as much rural service as WTA, but that's probably the closest peer community that we have within the state. And they do have a much smaller university too, so that's a major difference.
Yeah, I think one of my major concerns is Western. They rely on a high level of service. They demand a high level of service. And I like the idea of fare free, but I disagree with Michael. I think that it is a lot of money, especially when we're trying to figure out where money's going to come from for other things right now. A lot has changed in the last few years. I know that we're not destitute or anything, but I think that it's our job to keep an eye on that money. And so I keep going back and forth too. I think there's probably a lot of us on the fence, and
So those of you who represent the more rural parts of the county, you have to realize that service to you will always be more expensive than service along denser population corridors. The subsidy will always be greatest for you. And so going to zero fare is actually less of a change for you who are advocating for geographic equity, because you're already subsidized route.
Except if we want more service and we have less money. That's a concern to me, because we have been discussing a lot about expanding service out in the rural areas, and you know, it's gonna cost more.
Right, but fares isn't going to make the big difference because you're not going to recover very much fare. All those equity-based services are not going to recover fare very well. So keeping the fare doesn't make them that much more financially viable.
Well, part of the reason why collecting the fare doesn't make it that much more financially viable is those fares haven't been touched in how long? 15 years. I know we've talked about it in the last few years, but nothing ever came of it. And then we continue to decrease the number of people who actually pay. So one of the reasons that it's so much lower now is because the board has been actively trying to eliminate it over time, right? So it's kind of unfair to say, well, it's not a lot of money. Well, yeah, it's not a lot of money because we've not been keeping up with our fares, right? It's like never reading to your kid or teaching your kid, and then at 18 he doesn't know how to read and he doesn't graduate high school. Like, oh, you didn't put in the work. Well, no, we didn't put in the work to help with it. So I think that's kind of unfair. I mean, it is true, it's not a lot of money in the big scheme of things, but at the same time, that's on us for the board for actively not looking at fares and wanting to get to that 15% or whatever that number was that we had as kind of a benchmark. I believe it was 15%. I don't want to talk out of school there, but
Yeah, the fare recovery ratio goal was 15%.
And that's of operating costs, not 15% of total revenues. So it's a little bit of a different measurement, but it has been.
I'm sorry, Shannon, we're not going to get to the 15% by fare increases. We'd have to cut a lot of service. And it would be the most expensive service that we'd cut to get to the 15%. We're not going to get it with fares.
So
question.
I can't tell who's asking.
I'm sorry, Seth.
Right, Seth.
So do I understand the question before us today is whether to decide on whether we go forward with further exploration or not? It's not whether we have zero fare, it's whether we further explore, correct?
Yeah,
Right.
it's whether
The staff decision is that they have old orders to do a phase 2 fare collection study. And it makes no sense to do that fare study if zero is still on the table. So yes, the issue is, shall they keep exploring the idea of zero fare, or shall we put that all the way on the shelf?
Is there sort of a further consideration, further exploration light? It's like gathering some of the answers to some of the questions we've heard today and bring it back with a relatively quick turnaround with the intention of making that call.
Yeah, I'd like to do this very transparently. And so I'm going to make a motion just so we can kind of go on record. I move that we request WTA staff to consider exploring the idea of zero fare, in particular addressing the questions that were raised and issues that were raised today by board members, and bring that back to us.
I'll second that. If it's understood what the questions are, so staff knows what they're meant to do.
So yes, staff, you heard questions and issues raised today. Presumably someone was taking notes. Do you think you could respond to the motion? You know, would the motion work for you?
Les, do you want me to answer that?
Yeah, I was going to say, since it falls heavily on you, do you feel like you have enough direction?
Yeah, I believe so. I just, we want to make sure that those questions that you have are very clear. Yeah, I was taking notes and I think we have the minutes, but what I heard was questions about paratransit cost. I heard a lot of interest in hearing from other agencies and their experiences, which we do have information on that we can share. There's some other things too. I won't go through the whole list because I don't think it's complete, but I just want to make sure that we're really clear that the board is asking the questions that they would like us to answer.
Well, Tim, if we're going to go forward with this, I would like to include, excuse me, I would like to include some sort of revenue replacement for it, as Shonda said, the sales tax from the other municipalities, for example.
So that would be another key issue that would need to be addressed if we ask staff to keep working on this.
So that would be, Eric, just to be clear, that would be options for how we might replace the revenue. Okay.
So I made the motion and there was a second. Would people like to discuss the motion? Again, this motion really is to continue things moving forward and to make sure that the issues, concerns raised today will get addressed. I'm going to go ahead and call the question. For this one, I kind of like to do a voice vote. All those in favor of the motion to request staff continue to work on zero fare transition, addressing the issues and questions raised this morning, please unmute and say aye.
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 And all those opposed?
Nay.
So I heard 2 nays.
Aye.
3.
So that was, but still 2 nays, and Seth Paul's an aye. Okay, so the motion passes. Hopefully that gives staff enough clarity to continue working on this. How soon do you think we'll be able to address that? Next month or more like 2 months?
I'd suggest give us a couple months to gather the questions and to gather the Fair Policy Committee and discuss those questions, make sure we have a good response. So I would expect a couple months, but we'll work on getting that scheduled.
Okay, I'm going to make a request of board members. If you feel comfortable, could you send your questions or issues directly to Mr. Wilder? I want to make sure that each of you has the opportunity to express in your own words the issues that you would like to be addressed. Unless you think, of course, they've already captured them.
Hey, Mike. I'm sorry. Hey, Michael. Just for record keeping, I don't know if it's needed. Is there a need to know who was aye and who was nay? I mean, I guess that might be a question for Vicky.
Vicky, I think
there was some confusion on my
Ken
part.
and Eric, right? Was that the 2 nays?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Just making sure. Thanks.
No, that's good. Yeah, I'm again mindful of the time. We still have 2. I'm going to wrap up this discussion. We have 2 further items: a mission statement update and general manager report.
I would respectfully recommend we, in interest of time, defer those to next week.
Is there any objection by board members to deferring the last 2 items on the agenda?
No.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for this discussion. This is, I think, what the board is here to do. I kind of wish we were in person. I think it might have been a better discussion. Sorry, I'm not there, so I'm not one to talk. If there are no further business, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the WTA board meeting. Is there any further business? Okay, everyone, thank you so much. Everyone have a good day.